Good evening and welcome into another edition of Crunch Time Nightly here on ESTV Productions. My name is Michael Wags, Wagon Connect, joined alongside by my good buddy Joe Hamilton. Scott Tobin is on assignment at Busch Stadium as the Cardinals are wrapping up Game 1 of their series against Philadelphia, and we're going to get to that one here in a little bit because it is still ongoing, but things are tight. We're going to see something that we haven't seen very much of in a long time, and potentially a St. Louis Cardinals comeback. But first off, Joe, man, how are you doing tonight? It's another beautiful day here in St. Louis. Got a chance to get out and enjoy the weather a little bit, and we got a great day in sports all around. But how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, man. Today, a great day started with doing our mock draft earlier today, which you can find on our Facebook page. If you haven't seen that already, go check that out. And also getting to get out for a drive. And I got to tell you what, I didn't realize how windy it was, at least around here. I don't know. Was it as windy by you?
Oh, it was gale force winds out here in the O'Fallon area. It's unbelievable how, like, someone put it on Twitter today. They go, there's only been two types of weather in St. Louis here for the last couple of weeks. It's either been cold and rainy or it's been beautiful with gale force winds. And that really has been what it's been like for the last couple of weeks. Today was no different. But once again, sports are going on. It's been a great day for that. Like you said, we had our mock draft earlier today on our podcast. You can catch that on our Facebook page or wherever you get your podcasts at. We're going to dive a little bit into that in a couple of segments as well. Talk a little bit about our surprises, some potential moves that are going down as well. We'll get to that in a little bit. Like I said, we'll talk about the Cardinals. We got some college football talk as well coming up. We're going to start with the NHL, but before that, I just want to give a quick shout out to our listeners and our fans because we have just been so incredibly grateful for everybody that has been with us for almost the last 3 years. We've been going on since mid-2018, and we just couldn't be more thankful for the groups of people that we have following us. We just recently hit 800 likes on our Facebook page, almost at 900 now. It's been growing exponentially these last couple of weeks. And just like we did at 700, we are giving away some prizes at the 800 like level, and we're going to do the same thing at 900. And just a quick shout out to the people that we have picked as our giveaway winners. One from each year that we've been in existence. So we kind of went through and picked somebody from each year, including this year. So congratulations to Ashley Roberts, Joseph Held, Seth Harris, and Todd Bryan. You guys are going to be in contact from us. And as soon as we get our prizes lined up, we're going to get those out to you as well. I got a couple of great Crunch Time things as well as potentially some Cardinals memorabilia as well. So that's awesome for you guys. And once again, and Peyton, you're right. Shout out to Will, one of my employees. He bought a Crunch Time tumbler. You can get those at our website, crunchtime2creator at spring.com. Where you can get all of our merchandise as well, help support us. But thank you again for everybody's support over the last 3 years as we continue to grow and grow and grow. We got some great things on the horizon, some great guests, some great announcements, some great things happening. So make sure you stick with us as we continue to grow in the sports industry. So let's get to the NHL first because that game in St. Louis is already over, the Blues and Avalanche. But there's some other really, really good games that were going on as well because we're in the final stretch here, Joe. We're in essentially the last 10 games of the regular season, and there's a lot still up for grabs. Coming into tonight, only 3 teams had clinched a playoff spot in the NHL, and guess what? All 3 of those were in the West. You had Colorado, you had Vegas, and you had Minnesota. Well, obviously one of those teams, Colorado, was in action tonight against the St. Louis Blues, and the Blues are battling Arizona for that final spot in the West. It's kind of been a back and forth the last couple of weeks. No team has really taken hold of that position. The Blues do have 3 games in hand on those Coyotes, and right now, after their 4-1 victory tonight, they hold the 1-point lead. The Coyotes are going to be getting underway here in about 25 minutes against the San Jose Sharks, another team that's still mathematically alive for that 4th spot in the West, so a big-time game there. Let's break down this Blues game real quick before we hit to the rest of the scoreboard. 4-1 victory for the Blues. You get started with a great first period, a 2-0 lead, power play goal by Vladimir Tarasenko, and then after 20 games, Braden Shen finally finds the back of the net. And you're thinking, okay, good first period, but holy crap, there's still the second. The second period, they played well. Yes, they gave up a goal, but they also extended the lead. It was a 3-1 lead after that, and then they get a goal off from David Perron off of a deflection from Justin Falk, and then Robert Thomas gets on the board as well. His second goal of the year. Yes, he's been out due to injury, but as I was telling the guys on the Blue Notes pod tonight, every guy that we were needing to score a goal recently netted one. You had Vladimir Tarasenko getting one. You had Braden Shen getting one. You had David Perron getting one, and you had Robert Thomas getting one. Put these last two games against the Avalanche together, and the Blues are starting to resemble a little bit of the team that played early on last year and in the latter half of 2019 when they went on the Stanley Cup run. Are you starting to see the same sort of thing, or maybe is this just a fluke and Colorado's kind of having a couple bad games?
I think we're starting to see what the Blues can really do. We came into the season knowing they had a really talented roster. Injuries hit them hard. I'm not going to say any different. They did. So you didn't have a really confident Jordan Binnington. I mean, for a lot of time this year. Seems like he's starting to get confident lately. The Blues, we've said game in, game out that the Blues cannot skate with Colorado. They cannot skate with Colorado. Well, the last two games, they've been able to skate with and beat Colorado. And that's why, if you remember me talking to you on the Blue Notes pod, or at least putting a comment there, I asked you, if they go on a run, Wags, which it is possible now, beating Colorado the last two games. Granted, I know it's only 2 games, but it's still a tough team in Colorado. If they go on a run here, has your kind of, mindset changed since I asked that question? Especially seeing how this team's played?
Well, first off, I want to step back from something you just said. I don't think necessarily that the Blues skated with Colorado, especially tonight. It's not so much that they have the speed that Colorado does. They were actually able to contain the Avalanche in a sense, because there were still moments in both the last 2 games where the Colorado Avalanche got skating and they blew past the Blues. So let's not lay down the fact that they are skating with Colorado, but they are containing them. And that's the big thing. It's getting pressure into the offensive zone, cycling the puck, controlling play. They were out stick handling the Avalanche tonight for sure. I mean, you started to see confidence in Jordan Kyrou, confidence in Robert Thomas, guys that have been struggling as of late, but looked a little bit more like their normal selves coming into this game. And then for Robert Thomas to get the goal too, that's a huge, huge thing for him, because for the longest time we've been telling him, hey, you need to freaking shoot the puck. Like, shoot the puck. You can get as many opportunities as you want, but if you don't shoot the puck, they're not going to go in the net, and it's all for naught. So you're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence from those guys. The fact that tonight you had, Colton Parayko out, Vince Dunn out, a beat-up Torrey Krug out, not out, but playing tonight, and you had guys like Nico Mikkola, Jake Wallman, and Steven Santinian. I mean, Santinian's been on a taxi squad, and this is his first game with us. And yet they were able to shut down one of the top offensive units tonight, only allowing a power play goal. And yes, Jordan Binnington played very, very well tonight. He had a 2-pad stack save in that third period that really kind of solidified the win. I'm not going to sit here and say that my perception of this team has completely changed and they can go on an absolute tear of a run. But I do think they can match up with Colorado if they want to. And that's the big thing. The want to. That's the thing that's kind of plagued the Blues all year. But I'll say this. After they went down 2-0 in Saturday's game, and you saw Ryan O'Reilly basically just say, fuck it, and put this team on his back, they have not looked the same, and that's a good thing. And if they can continue that type of play against Minnesota, coming up against Vegas, all of a sudden, you go 7-3 in your last 10 games and you're feeling good about yourself. I could see them taking down a Vegas or a Colorado in the first round. Maybe not going a long Stanley Cup Finals run, but they could shock a couple of teams by going on a run if they play well.
But Wags, I would not put it past this Blues team to go on a Stanley Cup style run, just because they have had losing streaks this year where you're like, this team's not coming back from this. I know, granted, it's not the 2019 season where you're last in the league, but there were certainly some downs, and you hit rock bottom a couple times getting to 500. So I think it can happen. It's me being the optimist, yes, but there's too much talent, man.
But is there? I mean, is there too much talent? You've got Ryan O'Reilly. Yes, you got Braden Shen. You've got David Perron. You got Falk and Krug. You've got Bennington. But, like, really, do they have a lot of high-end talent?
Vladimir Tarasenko's still high-end talent. Yes.
Listen to Blue Notes pod from yesterday, and you'll see my thoughts on that.
No, well, I did, and I didn't agree with you at all, but I was not going to do it there. That's why I'm doing it here.
That's the perfect place to do it, is anytime you hear somebody talking against you. But that's the thing, and Lester hits it right on the head, and it's exactly what I said about Saturday. O'Reilly looked like he was pissed off. Hopefully it rubbed off on other players, and it kind of has. You know, I mentioned on Twitter tonight that as soon as Tarasenko scored that goal, I'm like, oh, guess what? Again, you put Vladimir Tarasenko in front of the net on the power play, and lo and behold, he scores a goal. He did that the last time they put him in front of the net. Well, that's only the second time I've seen that in this entire season, and it seems to have worked. So it's about putting players in the right positions and giving them the opportunities to score. And speaking of Ryan O'Reilly, it's taken him a little while to get into the captaincy mode, in a sense. Mm-hmm. And that's because, you know, he had to take over for Alex Pietrangelo. And Alex Pietrangelo and his lieutenants and Jay Bouwmeester and Alex Steen both gone this year as well. So O'Reilly's had to take the time to build his leadership team. And it's taken a little while for that to really kind of gel together. Well, now that he's kind of in control and he's showing a lead by example type of style, I think the Blues are turning a bit of a corner. And I'm not going to sit there and say they're going on a run like you think they can. You get into the playoffs, anything can happen. Don't get me wrong. But I do think this team is going to be a little bit more of a troublesome out when it comes to the playoffs. I don't think a team is really going to want to play the Blues if they're playing the style that they played tonight with everybody healthy and in the lineup.
So, that being said, who's the better matchup?
Colorado.
Vegas or Colorado? Why?
Goaltending.
That's
the biggest issue. I mean,
I can agree with you.
They've got some good goaltending in Colorado, but right now when it's Johansson and Dubnyk, I take that over Fleury and Leonard any day.
Well, and here's the thing: Grubauer is going to be back, but hold on.
Is it official?
Who knows? But if he is,
well, that's the thing. You can't say who knows and say he's back.
Okay, I'm in the mindset that he will be. So just hear me out. He's dealing with COVID right now. Athletes coming off of COVID, we've seen it in multiple sports. They've not been the same. Who knows if Philip Grubauer, even if he is the starter come playoff time, is the same goalie? Am I right or am I wrong?
So are you agreeing with me?
I'm disagreeing with you because I think even with Grubauer, this team can still beat Colorado because of COVID and how it affects players.
I said they could beat Colorado because of the goaltending, the fact that they don't have great goaltending.
Well, you said especially if it's Dubnyk and Johansson.
Especially if it's Dubnyk and Johansson. That doesn't exclude the fact that Philip Grubauer could be coming back. So, but you are agreeing with me.
Yes. But do you take the COVID into account with Grubauer or no?
No. I mean, yes, we've seen players and teams struggle. Obviously, the Blues struggled with COVID last year in the bubble. It may not be right off the bat. You may have a game or two where he really feels and looks good, but then it sets in after that. So, yeah, it definitely has an effect, but it's even if it was just a regular injury, I'd still think I would take Colorado with Grubauer over Vegas and Fleury and Leonard in net. So,
okay.
Yeah, plenty of stuff to go in the last 10 games or so of the NHL regular season. A couple of other news and notes that the Canadiens beat the Flames tonight. Jake Allen gets the win with stopping 21 shots, keeps the Canadiens 6 points ahead of the Flames. Senators pull within 1 point of the Canucks for last place in the North. Brady Tkachuk, a primary assist on both goals. The Stars, a 4-3 victory over the Hurricanes in overtime. This is coming off of the game where Dallas ended up beating Detroit in overtime, even though they outshot them 53-17. Unbelievable statistic there. Didn't get a chance to talk about that game the other night, but they win tonight in overtime as well. Predators a 4-1 lead over the Panthers in the third. Oilers 4-0 lead over the Jets as they try to take over second in the North, and the Ducks and Kings just underway in LA. Coming up next here on Crunch Time, we're going to get into Major League Baseball, talk a little bit about the Cardinals game tonight, among others. So make sure you stick around for more Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. p.m. back here on Crunch Time on ASTV Productions. Wags and Joe talking everything sports. Just got done talking about the NHL as it gets ready to wrap up its regular season, but the Major League Baseball season is just about underway for the last couple of weeks, and we've had some interesting games, to say the least, some teams jumping up and playing well that you didn't expect. Before we get to some of the games going on today, we got to talk a little bit about what went down today in Colorado and just the head-scratchingness of it all. If you guys remember, and if you watch the show, you know all about the Nolan Arenado saga that we've perpetuated for the last 3 years. But in the offseason, the Colorado Rockies traded Nolan Arenado to St. Louis, plus $50 million as part of that deal. And everybody was just in an uproar over it, couldn't believe it. But the main reason for the impetus of that move was, the relationship between Nolan Arenado and Rockies general manager Jeff Bridrich. And it just was not good. And Bridrich, he just didn't, for some reason, they just did not like each other. And you knew eventually Arenado was going to leave Colorado. You know that Bridrich was going to make a move and really try to keep that team intact as much as possible. He ends up trading Nolan Arenado, gets a lot of backlash. Well, 21 games into this season, 21 games after trading Nolan Arenado to St. Louis, Bridrich resigns as the Rockies general manager. Wasn't fired. He did this voluntarily. I mean, there may have been a little bit of pressure from the up and up saying, hey, look, we aren't going to go so far as to fire you, but it might be better if you just quietly resign. Well, I mean, you can't really quietly resign after you trade away your star player and $50 million to a big-time rival. But that's what happened. He resigned today. I don't know if I'm shocked or if it's more of the simple fact I'm shocked because he resigned and wasn't fired. I'm in awe of what actually went down in Colorado today.
Yeah, I am too. When I saw that and posted that on the page, and immediately after that, sending it into the group chat, I'm like, are you kidding me right now? This is real life. I mean, the thing was, you knew something was coming, or at least I thought something was coming, because there was so much bad backlash on Colorado's Facebook page. I kept reading that thing because they kept sharing pictures and whatever. And every comment, Wags, I was getting was fire British, fire their owner, even, Monfort, fire him, just things like that. You can't fire an owner, sell Monfort, things like that. It's like, you knew something had to come to a head because it was going to get ugly. And I'm sure Colorado's upper brass saw that and was like, we got to do something. And maybe it wasn't them necessarily, but they had to give them an ultimatum. I think the ultimatum was either you resign or we will fire you. I think it was.
It very well could be. And that's why I think I was a little bit in shock, was because I thought they would have fired him as soon as he made that trade, because you can sit there and say, okay, the trade needed to be made. Arenado was unhappy here, and you had to kind of see how the season started. But your GM is the one who really put Nolan in that position to want to get out. And yes, everything that's come out afterwards about Nolan, basically over the last few years, trying to find a way to get John Mozeliak to trade for him, shows you that his mindset was that he was always looking to leave Colorado and try to get to St. Louis. But still, I mean, if you have a winning organization and all of that, you're not going to try and leave. And then to have that relationship with the GM where you're back and forth through the media and all that stuff, you just knew it was going to happen. But to still, I mean, you as a GM, you have to have that relationship with your players that they want to stay there. Regardless of if you personally like them, you've got to make sure that you're professionally good to them so that they stick around, because your job is on the line. And whether or not he got fired or he was forced to resign, he still is no longer the GM of the Rockies. So your job was directly affected by the move of Nolan Arenado. It's not because Arenado has dropped off and you were trying to get something for nothing, in the last deal of his contract or what have you. You traded him kind of in his prime and gave a team money to take him from you. So it's a little bit of a surprise. Like you said, I think more than likely this was more of the upper brass saying, hey, look, we'll let you resign so you can kind of save face a little bit and not be fired, because if they would have fired him, that's exactly what people would have looked at. They're like, oh, he got fired because he traded Nolan Arenado. By him resigning, he can kind of control the narrative a little bit. Maybe he comes out and says, hey, there's some things going on in the family that require my attention, and I got to take my mind off the team and what have you. So he can kind of control how he's viewed in a sense. People are always going to know him as the guy who traded Nolan Arenado, but at least at this point, he can control the narrative just a little bit and maybe give himself a little bit of a better look when it comes to maybe applying for another job. But it is what it is. The Cardinals got lucky and got Nolan Arenado, so I'm not gonna sit there and complain too much about him resigning. Let's talk a little bit about some of the games that went down today. Earlier today, you were actually, as we were doing our podcast, you were commenting on the fact that the Tigers were playing a day game. They were playing the Kansas City Royals today, and I'm just gonna say it. I think the Royals are pretty good. They complete the sweep today of the Tigers with a 3-2 victory. Currently, well, actually not currently anymore, because the A's have just won 2-1. Coming into the night's games, they were an AL best 14-7, but they're still sitting in second place in the entire American League after the A's victory today. Brad Keller goes 6 innings, 2 earned, 4 strikeouts. Carlos Santana, a 2-run homer. Jared Dyson gets the go-ahead run in the 5th. You look at this team; they're young. They have some experience, but not a whole lot. They've got Santana and they've got Dyson, 2 veterans on this team. Mike Matheny is still the coach. Are you starting to come around at least a little bit to my thinking that Mike Matheny could actually be a good manager and a winning manager in this league?
Yeah, and this may sound odd, okay? When Mike Matheny was hired here, I think he was put in a bad spot. Hear me out, okay? So he was inheriting a winning team. Tony's team, really, if you want to think about it. So, that team slowly starts to fade and gets younger. It never seemed to work here. He goes to a young team already in Kansas City and can build that team. I think he's more of a manager who likes to develop right from the get-go and not come to an already powerhouse team. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but that's the only way I can explain how good it's been over there to how bad it was toward the end here. That I don't understand. Like, maybe you can help me understand.
It has to probably do more with control of who is on this team. I mean, we're seeing this a little bit with Mike Schilt as well. The guys that are on the Cardinals aren't necessarily 100% dictated by the manager. This is a lot of stuff is dictated by the higher ups. They bring in the guys that they think will fit this team, and then the managers kind of have to fit them in. I think that's the case with Mike Matheny. Yes, he inherited Tony's team. Tony had a lot of power here. Well, as soon as Matheny came in, he was a rookie manager with no experience. So your general manager and your owners basically are, in a sense, dictating, okay, this is the team we're giving you for the money that we're wanting to spend. Do with it what you will. It's more along the lines that Matheny probably didn't have as much say in who was on this team versus the say that he's getting in Kansas City right now. And yes, you can sit there and say he went in there and it's, he can develop a younger team from the beginning. Well, no, I mean, they had a lot of veterans on that team last year. And, they brought in guys that he was familiar with too, and especially a guy like a Trevor Rosenthal. So it's not so much that he wants to develop an entire organization from the bottom up, but I think it's more about having the control of who is on the team versus anything else. And you also have to remember, a lot of first-time managers don't have success in their very first stint. I keep going back to Tony La Russa. He did not have a lot of success with the White Sox. It wasn't until he got to Oakland and kind of learned from his mistakes and matured as a manager before he started to become a good manager. And then a great one after that, obviously. Mm-hmm. And Mike Matheny might be the same way, and he's not going to be the only one as well. I mean, every first-time manager is going to have struggles, and you'll see generally some improvement the next time they get a job. And I think that's what you're seeing. Yes, there were some clubhouse issues here in St. Louis with Matheny, and I think he learned from that. Good managers learn from their mistakes. And I think you're seeing that. And it also helps that, Kansas City has a guy like Salvador Perez who did leave the game injured today. Don't have a status update on him just yet. But having a guy like Perez is just like having a guy like Molina here in St. Louis, a guy that can control a pitching staff and help mentor the youth. So Kansas City has a lot of stuff going for them right now, and they very well could be a bit of a thorn in the AL Central. Yeah, you got the Twins. Yes, you've got the White Sox, and they're both really, really good teams. But Kansas City could be a team that's a little bit of a dark horse for the wild card this year, and they might have a shot.
Yeah, and we all know Kansas City teams that go to the wild card end up going to a World Series. So, not saying it'll happen here.
Twice.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy enough. But you know what? I wish Mike Matheny.
Well, I'm just saying it's only happened twice. But
yeah, right. But Mike Matheny, I wish him nothing but success. He's a good religious guy that knows the game. I mean. How many times have we said it, Wags? Catchers make the best managers because they are managing the game on the field. Am I wrong on that?
I mean, a lot of the best managers you see are former catchers or former catching prospects. Yeah, because they're field generals. So a field general going to the general spot makes a lot of sense. So Joe Girardi's one of those guys. Mike Matheny. You had, Joe Torre. Was La Russa a catcher? I can't remember. But, you see a lot of former catchers being the ones that have good managerial careers just because they have a lot of control over pitching staffs and how the game is managed and from there on and there out. So, yeah, it does make a lot of sense that would be the case. Some other games that were in action tonight, you had the aforementioned Twins facing off against the Indians. The Indians actually take this game 5-3 in 10 innings. Jose Ramirez hit the game-tying home run in the 8th inning. Lupolo hit a 2-run walk-off home run for the Indians. Zach Plesac goes 7 2/3 and gives up 3 earned runs. The Orioles, one of the big-time surprises right now, 4-2 victory over another big surprise, the Yankees, who are terrible right now. Cedric Mullins hits 2 home runs for the Orioles. Matt Harvey, resurgent in Baltimore right now, 6 innings pitched, an earned run, and 5 strikeouts. Is that, we talked a little bit about this last week, but are the Yankees / Orioles at AL East, is that like one of your biggest surprises right now?
Yeah, and it's mainly been the Yankees for me because of the stacked lineup I talked about in the past. You got Stanton, you got Judge, LeMahieu, this and that. Gary Sanchez is having a better year, which is great for my fantasy team, but that's another story. But you also, if you have your top guys hitting below 200, there is a big problem. And I attested to a lot of these guys in this current game today going for one thing and one thing only in launch angle. I don't know what you think, man, but launch angle has killed this game for the pure fan. In a sense, because look,
I'd have to disagree because we saw in tonight's Cardinals game, you had Zach Wheeler and Adam Wainwright both go the distance, both pitch 9 innings. And for a baseball purist, that's amazing. That's what you want to see. And
right.
Unfortunately for the Cardinals, they were on the wrong end of a 2-1 Phillies victory tonight. Rhys Hoskins hits 2 home runs. Dylan Carlson drives in the lone Cardinals run in the 9th inning on a ground out, scoring Matt Carpenter. But both pitchers go 9 innings tonight, and that's something you do not see pretty much ever in this league. So if you're going to talk about the game being ruined by launch angle, I point you in the direction of the Cardinals-Phillies game tonight and say, whoa, not so fast, sir. There's still a lot of purity in this game when you have 2 guys, especially one of them being Adam Wainwright, going 9 innings in a loss. So I don't think it's ruining the game completely. I still think you have a lot of great things going on in Major League Baseball. Yes, it's definitely hurt things a little bit, but it's the evolution of the game. The long ball was huge in the 90s coming out of the strike. It's gone away. It went away a little bit. Now it's coming back a little bit. It's just the ebb and flow of the sport. And eventually it's going to come back to a pitching type of game. So we'll see how that goes. A couple of other scores tonight. The A's take out the Rays 2-1. Currently at the bottom of the 8th, the Braves an 8-7 lead over the Cubs. Marlins 7, Brewers nothing in the top of the 8th. Angels a 9-4 lead over the Rangers. Shohei Ohtani gets to start in that one. He's the first pitcher since Babe Ruth to start a game while leading the league in home runs. Incredible. The Mariners are trailing the Astros 5-2 in the 7th. Giants a 4-0 lead over the Rockies, and the Reds and Dodgers are just underway. Bases loaded, 1 out in the bottom of the 1st for the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw is not up to bat, though, with the bases loaded. If you watched that game last night at the Padres, you'll know what I'm talking about. Coming up next here on Crunch Time, we're going to dive a little bit into the NFL draft. So make sure you come back for more more Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions.
Hey Crunch Time fans, my name is Graham Forsyth. I'm the host of Coffee with Graham and the Prospect Show on ASTV Productions. On Coffee with Graham, I talk to athletes, coaches, and whoever else involved in the amateur sports scene in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And on the Prospect Show, I talk to the best young hockey prospects from around North America. You can catch all the coverage on ASTV Productions. You can catch Coffee with Graham on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. And for the Prospect Show, that show airs every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time. Hope to see you there. Have a good one.
And as always, make sure you catch out all of the great shows here on ASTV Productions. Got a lot of great stuff that gets you going, whether it's hockey, baseball, football, soccer, anything, we've got you covered here on ASTV Productions. All right, let's get into the NFL draft a little bit. We touched on earlier that we did our mock draft on our podcast earlier today. A little bit of a surprise, I think. We had the top 2 picks. Actually, we had all 3 of us had the top 3 picks kind of in order. You know, we all think Trevor Lawrence is going number 1 to Jacksonville. We all think Zach Wilson to the Jets, and we all think Mac Jones to the 49ers at 3. After that, things kind of went all over the place. It was definitely offensive heavy, and a couple of us made some trades, but nothing too crazy outside of the fact that, you know, Scott had Denver and Chicago making big-time moves to grab some quarterbacks, but we'll let you listen to that on your own time to see who he picked. But after our conversation, Joe, what were you looking at as far as like the biggest surprises kind of in our mock draft today that made you go, maybe that's not as crazy as I thought it was?
You know, I was doing some picks offensively when you guys were going defense. You guys were going defense when I went offense. And I kept asking you, I go, would you make this move? You're like, no, that's not necessarily a terrible move. Nothing really shocked me because we're all 3 different people and we have 3 different mindsets to where teams are gonna go. But I'm shocked all the skill positions went early. I mean, not early, but like to the point at pick 20, we were done with the wide receivers, the quarterbacks, the running backs. At least part of us was, or at least I was.
No, not at all.
Wait. Okay.
Your first running back went off the board at 24, and your only running back went off the board at 24. So no, that's not the case at all. No, it's not.
Well, I just found it interesting that, you know, on most draft boards, and it didn't have to do with you necessarily, you or Scott, but on some draft boards, Travis Etienne wasn't there in round 1. And, you know, when you think of Trevor Lawrence, you think of Travis Etienne at Clemson, right? Those 2 make each other better. My question is, how is Etienne not on people's draft boards in the first round? What is that mindset? Because that just, for me, I understand in a sense not wasting too much money on a top running back because you know about their leg issues. They don't have like the longevity. But I think a guy like Etienne can be that X factor, that quarterback that you don't see too often, a guy who is, you know, can be around for 10 years. So I just want your thoughts on that.
You have to remember he's not a breakaway runner. He's not a speedster. He's definitely more of a pick 'em cut kind of guy, and that's where you get worrisome about leg injuries and things of that nature wearing down. Guys that have speed, they have the ability to obviously outrun the opponent. So they're not going to be going inside the tackles as much. You know, you look at Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's a guy that's a bruiser, but he does have some speed, and he's got a lot of size. I don't think Travis Etienne has the size of a Derrick Henry, which means he's not going to be a guy that you really want hitting the hole as hard as Derrick Henry does. The one thing going for Etienne, and that's why I've got him going to Pittsburgh, Scott also has him going in the first round as well, and it's funny because, you know, looking at your mock draft, you did not have Travis Etienne in your first round.
Yeah.
So that's why it's interesting that you're asking why he's not in the first round, even though you didn't have him in there. But it's mainly, he does catch the ball out of the backfield. And that's a big, big plus for a running back, being able to be that extra receiver for a quarterback to kind of check the ball down to. But he also is very smart. He's a very smart runner. So he can find the hole and make the cuts and make things happen. So going to a place like a Pittsburgh, or in Scott's case, going to a place like Arizona, it's a good fit for him. So the reason he probably isn't going in the first round in some mock drafts, or the one mock draft that you looked at, is that the system that he would thrive in maybe isn't ready to draft a running back at that point in time. Maybe there's another need. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. Longevity, like you said, being, having to pay a premium for a running back when really running backs are kind of a dime a dozen right now, and a team's needs. A team that may need a running back may be picking high in the first round and may not want to waste a pick on a first round talent. You might see one of those teams like a Jacksonville, or a New York Jets team, or a Cincinnati team, or something of that nature. If Etienne or even Najee Harris, if either of those guys are still available at 28, 29, 30, you might see one of those teams calling in and trying to move up from the early second round into that late first round spot to try and grab them, because running backs will go in that upper second round. So if those guys are available at 28, 29, 30, something to that effect, you might see one of those second round top picks jump back up into the first round to grab them. But the ones that are absolutely in need of them aren't going to waste a high-end first-round pick for a running back. So I think that's kind of, there's 3-4 reasons why those guys aren't going in the first round like they used to.
Wags, I remember doing some lists with you and different things. Did my draft have any surprises to you? Because you didn't really say it today, but I've always wanted to ask you, because some things I say surprise you. So if there is one thing, what is it?
No, nothing really surprised me about it. We all kind of had the same guys within, 3 or 4 picks of each other. So it's not like we were way off on something like that. No, I don't think there was anything that made me go, yeah, no, that's not good. And a lot of it is because a lot of these teams do have needs on both sides of the ball. So you almost couldn't go wrong with some of these guys that are being picked. It's a deep draft this year. So nothing could really surprise me in a sense, unless it's a guy that, maybe it's like a NCAA Division II player going in the first round and you're going, what? That's about the only thing. And there is a team that would do that. You look at Las Vegas, and the Raiders are a team that might go that route and pick a guy that is playing Division II in the first round and make you go, but you didn't do that. So so we're all good.
Okay.
Real quickly, we talked a little bit about this at the end of the show, but some big trades could still happen. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson were all rumored to be in the mix of being traded. I think we kind of nixed that a little bit in that end of the show, but there still could be some moves. Are there any other names that could move at the draft that would surprise you?
Well, no, but I will say one that won't surprise me, and I'm still trying to figure out where he would fit, and that'd be Julio Jones. That's going to be one of the biggest trades, probably one of the biggest hauls for a guy in Julio Jones. I just have trouble figuring out where his landing spot would be.
Well, the big thing with that is he cannot be traded until after June 1st.
Right,
with the way the salary cap works and how things are for Atlanta right now. So he won't be going at the draft. It would be more so post-draft. And the big thing for that would be that's how it's going to affect Atlanta's pick this year. Right now they're settled in at the 4 seed. Now in my mock draft, I actually had them trading down with Denver, and I had them picking Jalen Waddle from Atlanta to replace Julio Jones. But with that on their mind, that's going to have to figure into how they draft as well. So do they stick at 4 and draft a quarterback? Do they draft a wide receiver at that point? Do they make some moves to gather some picks? What do they do? And that's going to be a huge factor going into the draft as well. So something we definitely have to watch when it comes to that. Outside of that, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of big time moves going on as much as we'd like to think that that's going to be the case. I don't think you're going to see it. You may see a couple teams make some moves up to try and grab a quarterback. New England is one of those. Obviously, Denver's another one. So those are the big moves I think you're going to actually potentially see on Thursday. But a lot to come in the next couple of days. Another note in the NFL that is very interesting and unique at this point in time, and it's actually got some connections here to Missouri as well. Former Mizzou player Sean Culkin plays for Kansas City now, and he's a tight end. He's appeared in 19 games, has a total of 2 catches in his career. But he made some news today when he said that he would convert his entire salary to Bitcoin this year. And now, granted, he still has to make the roster in order for that to happen. But if he does, he would be converting his entire $920,000 salary to Bitcoin. And you may sit there and go, okay, that's one guy. But you look at what happened in December. Russell Okung announced that he'd convert half of his salary to Bitcoin this past December. And presumptive number 1 pick Trevor Lawrence signed a deal with the investment group Blockfolio, and his signing bonus is going to go to cryptocurrency as well after signing. So we're starting to see a little bit of a drift to this cryptocurrency Bitcoin stuff. And I'll be perfectly honest, I have no idea what the hell any of that means. Me neither. But it's something that we might want to start looking at, because now that you're having football players starting to invest in cryptocurrency and things like Bitcoin, and with it being in the news so frequently as of late, this is something that maybe we should all be starting to get a look at, because it might be the wave of the future when it comes to investing and building your wealth, just like the stock market. And it's just interesting because it's a former Mizzou player doing this and a guy who's playing for Kansas City this year potentially. This could be something big and something we need to be watching.
Yeah, it really is. And I remember, my first radio gig, and they used to talk about cryptocurrency all the time and how you can make a lot of money. I just wonder how that would work, carrying money around, and what it would look like, or if it would just be a computer generated thing. I don't know. That's my biggest thing. Like, what can we expect? I need to look more into that.
I think we all do, and it's more so about how close are we to having microchips in our arms, so we just have to wave it and we're all of our stuff is charged. That's the thing that's a little worrisome to me. Not the fact that I'd have a microchip in my arm, but it's interesting to say the least. And yes, definitely have to do a little bit more digging and a little bit more research into Bitcoin, because honestly, a lot of the guys that I talk with all over on the Hockey Podcast Network, Blue Notes Pod, all of that, they're all into this cryptocurrency, and I have no idea what they're talking about. So I definitely need to get a little bit more knowledgeable about that, especially if it's starting to permeate its way into sports as far as athletes are concerned, because it could change the dynamic completely on how we view contracts, how we view anything when it comes to sports. So definitely something we'll have to keep an eye on. All right, coming up next here on Crunch Time, we're going to dive a little bit into the NBA and a little bit into the college sports industry as well. A new bill has been reintroduced that could pave the way to college athletes getting paid, among other things. So make sure you stick around for more Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. And we're back here on Crunch Time on ASTV Productions, Wags and Joe, bringing you all the sports news of all things going in action tonight. Let's talk a little bit about the NBA, because just like the NHL, starting to wrap up their regular season and getting closer to this 7 through 10 seed play-in tournament that we've heard a whole lot about, something that actually is very, very close to becoming official for the rest of time, it seems like. Lots of teams battling out for the potential to be in the playoffs. One of those teams is my team, the Chicago Bulls. They were in action tonight against the who am I trying to sit here and say? The Miami Heat. Bulls against the Heat. The Bulls were sitting 2 games back of that 10th seed, whereas Miami was sitting in the 7th seed. Tonight, the Bulls, a 110-102 victory. That pulls them to within 1 game of that final spot in those play-ins. And before we get into more scores, what's your thoughts on this play-in for the NBA final couple of seeds for the playoffs?
I like it. It breeds more attractiveness into the playoffs. And I know nobody wants to see the playoffs go on forever, but I believe this will be fruitful for the NBA in the future too. Also, my only question there is, where would you play these games? Would it be better record gets those games, or it's especially if it's a play-in tournament? Is it higher seed? It's just weird to even think about, because I guess it'd be higher seed against lower seed, whatever. But
no, it's not. It's not whatever, man.
No.
You can't keep saying that. You can't keep saying that. I mean,
higher seed versus lower seed
drives me nuts.
Right.
The higher seed, I believe, is going to have home court advantage for that. Give them a little bit of a boost to that. And rightly so, because they're the ones that are technically in that higher seed position. The one thing that really excited me about last year, the bubble, was the fact that you had a little bit of this play-in and this competition to get some teams the potential to get in. And it's more so because of the amount of games that they played pre-pandemic and all that stuff. But it did raise the excitement level, like you said, of getting into the playoffs. And yes, you're looking at those 7 and 8 seed teams, and they've done enough to, in regular seasons, get into the playoffs, and now you're sitting there saying that their playoff chances are on the line if they can't win a game or a couple of games. Yeah, I get it, but it does bring excitement, because instead of having 8 or 9 teams fighting for playoff spots, now you've got potentially 10, 11, 12 teams fighting for those last couple of spots, and it's going to expand interest from the fans in, your team may be under 500, as we see a lot of that in the East, but they still have a chance of getting into the playoffs. And you can sit there and complain all you want about under 500 records and all that getting into the playoffs. Generally, it kind of all plays itself out, and your higher seeds and your winning teams are going to advance. Sometimes you get the off chance a lower seeded under 500 team makes a run in the playoffs. That's what makes the playoffs great. But it's gonna eventually work itself out to where those higher seeds and better teams are going to make it to the final rounds of these playoffs. So I'm not too terribly worried. It is going to bring more excitement. I kind of reinvested in the NBA last year when these play-in games were happening. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you're looking forward to it as well. And the one thing I don't think you're looking for is maybe the Lakers having to play in that play-in tournament. They were in the midst of a 3-game losing streak, still without LeBron. They had the Magic in town, or they were in Orlando to play the Magic tonight, and they thankfully stopped that free fall with a 114-103 victory. Anthony Davis, 18 points. Dennis Schroeder led the way with 21 points. Who is Dennis Schroeder?
Exactly. But you need guys like that, guys that aren't really known. You need them to lead the way at times. You can't always have LeBron and AD lead the way. And it's nice to see somebody, carry the torch. The guys' backs will get hurt figuratively, having to carry a team the whole way. So, you know what? You need guys like that.
That you do. The 76ers, a 121-90 victory over the Oklahoma City Thunder. That pulls the 76ers to within 1 game of Brooklyn for the top spot in the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee is sitting 3.5 games back. The New York Knicks, 7.5 games back. The Knicks were on a 9-game winning streak coming into tonight's game against the Phoenix Suns, who sit in second place in the West and sit now a game and a half back as they take down the Knicks, 118-110. So that 9-game winning streak for the Knicks is over. Derrick Rose, 22 points for New York. Devin Booker, 33 for the Suns. But I'll say this. The Knicks are quietly getting themselves back into good territory. I mean, they're 34-28 this year. They're over 500, which is something you can't say for the Knicks over the last, 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice seeing the Knicks coming back to glory. but they still need to get a new owner. They still need to get a new owner.
Do you think it's playing in spite of him, or do you think they're just like, you know what, forget the owner? Well, that's what I just said. Basically.
Yeah, I just said that's the same thing.
No, basically, like, is it playing in spite of them? Because that's what makes me think so. They have some talent there. I do like Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin is going to be a stud. Thing is, they got to build around him, and again, they have the owner. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, obviously they're playing in spite of him. I don't think they want to see him, get success, but they also want to have success because they're not going to be able to move on to a new team if they don't prove that they can win games. So, I think they're definitely winning in spite of Dolan owning that team. Who knows if that's going to change hands anytime soon. We'll have to definitely keep an eye on that. Another team that was streaking were the Washington Wizards. They were on an 8-game winning streak, sitting on the 10th seed in the East. They were facing off against the Spurs, who were sitting at 9th in the West. And this one went to overtime. And it was a good game. DeMar DeRozan and Bradley Beal were going shot for shot. DeRozan, 37 points for the Spurs. Bradley Beal, 45 for Washington. Unfortunately, the Wizards fall 146-143, halting that 8-game winning streak. San Antonio now just sits a half game behind the Memphis Grizzlies, who are in action right now. They are down 10 to the Nuggets after the third quarter. So you might see the Spurs jump into that 8th spot and take over the Grizzlies spot there. And that's going to be a fun series if the Spurs and the Grizzlies have to meet in this play-in.
Yeah. Who would you take in that play-in? I mean, is it a coin flip, or is it you're like, you know what? Let me think for a second. The Spurs, or
I mean, it's so hard to go against San Antonio because of all the success that they had and Greg Popovich and all of that. But man, do I really like Ja Morant, and I really like Memphis. I definitely think it'll be a coin flip. It really, really will. I mean, the Spurs have the legacy and the pedigree to win that series or that game, but I do think the Memphis Grizzlies have a real shot as well. I mean, they were there at the end last year trying to fight in to get into the playoffs, and they faltered a little bit. And I don't think they want to be in that situation again. They know what it takes to lose that. They're going to find some way to potentially win that. So I definitely think it would be a coin flip if that's what it came down to be. So that's going to be a fun thing to watch as we go down here in the stretch. Really, the only team that's clinched a playoff spot right now are the Utah Jazz. Unfortunately for them, they fell tonight to the Minnesota Timberwolves, 105-104. The Timberwolves have officially been eliminated along with the Rockets. But you got to think the Jazz are resting their players, their stars, getting them ready to go for the playoffs. Obviously, they have to keep an eye on Phoenix and the Clippers. Both teams sit 1.5 and 2.5 games back, respectively. They don't want to lose that number 1 seed, but they're doing what they can to protect their players and keep them healthy.
Yeah, and that's the right thing to do. And I was actually watching something earlier today with our old buddy from broadcast school, Joe Davis, and he basically said he thinks that they're just a regular season good story and that this team can't do much in the playoffs, depending on who they play. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if you're looking at it, depending on how things play out, you're facing potentially either Memphis, San Antonio, or Golden State in the playoffs as the 1 seed. And, Utah hasn't won anything yet. Whereas, especially San Antonio and Golden State, once again, with pedigree, I can't necessarily disagree with him. I can't necessarily disagree that Utah would falter. Do I think they're not a playoff team? No, I think they are a playoff team. I think they could be very, very good. But to have your first matchup going up against potentially either a Spurs or Golden State team, potentially, that's a bit scary if I'm a Jazz fan. But if they are able to get past that, I would watch out. Now, if LeBron's healthy and comes back and plays well, that's scary too. The top 5 in the West are just, no pun intended, redunculous. I mean, you got Utah, you got Phoenix, you got the Clippers, you got Denver, you've got the Lakers. I'd even throw Dallas into that mix as well with Luka Doncic. I mean, there's a lot of talent in the upper part of the Western Conference, and I could see any one of those teams really coming out of that and representing in the NBA Finals. Whereas you look over in the East, and it's Brooklyn and Philadelphia, maybe Milwaukee, maybe Boston if they put things together, but they're sitting in the 6th seed. There's not a lot of like confidence in myself in the Eastern Conference. There's a lot of confidence in the Western Conference for me. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it will be. And in the East, you got Boston. Does Jason Tatum ever catch a break? This kid's always seemed like he's getting hurt. He's not really played well when he's been healthy. What do you think's been wrong with Jason Tatum? Has it been just the injuries, or do you think it's a mindset thing?
It's just a trying year. I mean, you're going to go through it. I mean, we can't really sit there and say it's been bad. I mean, they're 7-3 in their last 10. Yes, they're on a 2-game losing streak, but they're still playing halfway decent. They've had a lot of setbacks this year, but they're battling through it. So sometimes battling through adversity is good for a team, and maybe that does set them up to go on a run potentially in the postseason. We'll see. But like I said, they have to have everything clicking for them to go on a run. But if they do click, that might be a team to kind of watch out for. All right, one final thing I want to touch on before we get out of here, and that's over in the NCAA. The athlete compensation bill has been reintroduced. And this one is a bipartisan effort led by Emmanuel Cleaver, a Missouri Democrat, and a guy you might be familiar with, a former Ohio State player and Ohio Republican, Anthony Gonzalez. These two guys are headlining this bipartisan bill that would give college athletes the right to be compensated for their use of their name, image, and likeness. Now, this bill is very similar to one that was proposed in September, but the key difference is it limits players from endorsing certain companies and products, but also prohibits schools, conferences, and the NCAA from entering into financial agreements with those groups as well. So it's a very, very tricky thing, but it gives athletes a little bit of potential when it comes to being compensated for their likeness. And with the announcement that the NCAA football series is coming back, this is something that's going to be huge. Now, the NCAA has been trying to rewrite the rules, but they're asking Congress for help because some states, including Florida, are going to have NIL set to be enacted this summer. And it could get really, really messy because you may have the ability to earn money in Florida, whereas maybe in Missouri, you're not. So that's going to affect recruiting and players going certain directions. And they really, in the NCAA especially, really wants Congress's help to set something up that's going to be a blanket thing across the country that's going to allow athletes to be compensated for their likeness and still protect the NCAA's ability to make money. Now, I get it. The NCAA is huge, and any hit to their financial compensation is not one that we should be like, oh, poo, they don't get this much money. Oh, right. They only get that much money. But I still think this is something that needs to happen because, yes, athletes are getting scholarships. They're getting paid to go to college. But there's still players that are getting scholarships that can't even buy lunch, okay? They can't buy lunch. They can't fly home if their family has an emergency, and they can't be offered a plane ticket by certain people because it's an improper gift. So, like, I think there is a bit of a balance that needs to be struck here, and I think this bill might be the one that gets it through.
I think it is too, and again, I have a question with this though. Would there be a cap on how much money an athlete can make?
There would have
especially with the NCAA wanting to make money. What is that percentage in your mind, Wags? Like, what would be that percentage that an athlete should get paid if this does pass?
I mean, I don't know if it's a percentage. I mean, it might be an amount, maybe not exceeding $1,000 or something to that effect. I really don't know what the specifics are, but I'd have to dive a little bit deeper into it to find out. But I think there should be like a financial limit, not a percentage, but a dollar amount probably is what you're looking at. Maybe something that doesn't exceed X amount of dollars would be something that you would have to look at as well. So this is something to definitely bear watching because as the summer approaches with these NILs potentially going into effect, Congress has to move fast. And the fact that you have a bipartisan effort going down on this gives me a little bit of hope that something might pass here in the next month or so before any of these things take effect and really mess up recruiting and transfers and all that as well. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll keep our ear to the ground on that. Make sure you guys check out our podcast from earlier today, the NFL mock draft that went on, and make sure you catch us every night here on Crunch Time on ASTV Productions, 9 to 10 for Crunch Time Nightly. For Joe, for Scott, who just got done at the Cardinals game, I am Wags. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.